All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Holy cow, how did we already get here? If some of you are like, oh my gosh, we've already blown through the first month and some change of 2023. Yes, we have. So this is the Texas Leadership Network Mastermind. We meet every month on the second Thursday of the month. All of our recordings are out on the YouTube channel, except for the one that Troy spoke at because, well, somebody forgot to hit record. But all the others are out there. And we do also have a LinkedIn page called Texas Leadership Network. If you are not following it, please do so. We highlight coaches and topics out there as well. Today, I have the pleasure of being the facilitator, and we're talking about priorities. So Sean talked about goals last month and setting goals and making sure that you're writing them down and tracking to them and making sure that it's something you're passionate about, right? You have to have a why behind that goal, or you're probably going to have a really hard time being successful in the end. When we think about our goals or even our daily tasks, setting priorities is often something that we all struggle with. So I've got a few ideas here that I want to present to you, and then I'm going to open it up to everyone else so that we can share ideas with each other, things that you use for setting priorities, or even talk about a couple of the ones that I've presented here. First up is the 80-20 rule. Where we're spending the best of our time on the things that weigh the most. In reality, if we look at the things that we should be working on, it's probably about 20% of the things. The other 80% are nice to do, nice to have, maybe want to. It's that 20% that we need to be spending our time on. The same is true in a lot of other areas of our businesses, whether we're looking at our clients, the way we spend time in networking groups or with other groups that we belong to, chambers of commerce. There's 20% that we really need to focus on. So using that 80-20 rule when you're setting priorities, what is the 20% that I really need to focus on first? And it all starts with creating the list, right? What are the things that you're, okay, let's see, Big Phil. All right. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. Sorry, Big Phil, you had a lot of background noise. Oh, and he left. Did I scare him away? Wow. All right. 80-20, you've all heard it, right? We can apply that here when we're talking about priorities. The next one that I want to show you comes from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Some of you may know it as the Eisenhower Principle. And it's taking the things that we're doing and putting them into quadrants and looking at urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, not urgent and not important. Those things down on the bottom right-hand quadrant are just nice to have things. Where we want to spend most of our time is actually in the top right-hand corner, not left, or right-hand corner in important but not urgent. Oftentimes the things that become urgent are because we didn't get to them on time. So if we can stay on top of our time, then we spend most of our time in the important but not urgent space. Of course, there are things that will become urgent in some cases, and we'll spend a little bit of time there, but using this to figure out where your priorities lie, and it oftentimes will help you realize that you're working in that urgent space a lot, and staying on top of that will make your life much less stressful if you can keep them in the important space versus the urgent and important. So that's the second one. The third one is the ABCDE method. Make your list of all the things that you need to get done, and you're going to apply an A, a B, a C, a D, or an E. So everything that you apply an A to are the things that you must do. The B, something you should do. The C, nice to do. D, delegate. because you don't have to do it. And E, you probably could guess, eliminate. Just stop doing it. So as you look at that list of things that you think all have priority, could you use the ABCDE method? All right, one more lesson we all need to learn is to say no. So when you're setting priorities, when you are time constrained and you want to work on the most important things first, stop saying yes. Some of us have that disease. Yes to everything until we learn how to say no. But when we say no, we get more respect from those we're saying no to. And I'm not saying put your hand up and say, no, I'm not doing that, right? It really is, no, I can't do that right now because I have these other things on my plate. I have priorities in this other space. So be honest with the person who's asking you to do something. Clarify your reasoning. Let them know why you've said no. Give an alternative. I can't do that right now, but if you come to me 6 months from now, I'm kidding. If you come to me 3 weeks from now, I might be able to help you with that. And if they continue to keep bothering you, you can just tell them no, and it's okay. How many of you struggle in this space? How many yes people in here? Nobody? Very. Okay. Yeah, it happens, right? Especially I find in the giving back space. Like if any of you work in a nonprofit area, you sit on a board, you're part of an event, fundraising, it's really hard to tell those people no. But here's what I want to share with you. When you finally decide to tell them no, you're giving someone else the opportunity to step up and do that work. If you continue to say yes, they would never have the opportunity to learn how to do it. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's about giving other people opportunities. And last but not least, this is my favorite, also comes from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and it's the big rocks. If you haven't read the book and you don't know what this stands for, I'll explain to you. As you look at the jar on the left-hand side and you see the sand, the pebbles, and the big rocks, what's happening here is we're saying yes to everything, the sand, and then we're trying to shove the pebbles in on top of that, which are the medium priorities. And then once we get to the high priority items, which are those big rocks, there's no room left in the jar. None. If you take those same materials, those same thoughts, and you put the rocks in first, the big rocks, put the big rocks in first, the priorities, then there's room for the pebbles, the sand, and even water in that jar. So work on the big rocks first, and everything will fit. Those are my thoughts on priorities. Anybody have something they want to share?
I'm happy to share something.
Eddie?
So I was just thinking about the psychology of prioritization, right? And how we kind of kid ourselves about things, and also how if we kind of make ideas about how we're going to sort of dominate certain things. So what one thing that I like in your kind of 5 things to do, I think just before eliminate, there's something else which I call conscious parking. So like take your thing that you kind of got hanging over you that you really need to do, whatever it is. It's like your taxes. You've got to do your taxes. Oh my God, taxes. And every day you wake up and you're totally obsessed by the fact that you've got to do your taxes, but you never get to it. If you make the decision to say, I'm going to do that starting 3 weeks on Monday. And so you consciously park it. You don't get rid of it. You can't get rid of it. But you make a decision. You're not even going to think about it until 3 weeks on Monday. And then actually you might possibly do it. So it's a kind of giving yourself a bit of a psychological trick. And the other thing I wanted to mention is what I call the washing up theory, which is like, it particularly applies to our kids. How, they come home and they've got their schoolwork to do, and suddenly the washing up looks really appealing. and they'll get there and they'll be washing and scrubbing and drying and putting everything really neatly in the closets and stuff. And it's like, well, suddenly you're focusing on this, and it's because it's relatively more appealing than the thing you actually really need to do. So I think we have to watch ourselves for that we'll go off and do equivalents of the washing up, because it kind of is, this is the moment I need to go and quickly organize that shelf in the garage, instead of actually starting on my taxes. So,
yeah, because it feels good, right, Eddie?
It feels good, yeah.
It releases endorphins. Like, this is true, you guys. When we mark things off of our list, or we do the little thing and get excited about it, it releases endorphins in our brain. So another reason why we do scrolling on our phone, which is a problem when we talk about priorities too, right? It does. It makes us happy when we can check things off our list. So go do the big thing, right? Thank you, Eddie. Who else?
One thing that comes to my mind is that works for me, and I'm setting priorities is a major weakness. For what I find is, if I have a big task, and it's like he just said with his taxes, he sit there, it's always that big task is sitting there and you can never start it. I find I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to organize this. I'm going to do my W-2s. I'm just one, and I say just one thing, and that's it. And split it up into a bunch of almost infinitesimally small tasks. And somehow I get momentum. And of course, eventually I start ticking off a lot of them at once, because I've actually got going.
I love that, Barry. And so taking a giant project or task and carving it up into smaller bits. Yeah, that's
it's
amazing.
like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. Yeah, does anybody do like a 15-minute rule? Like you do something for 15 minutes and then you move on to the next thing. Barry, do you put a time? Or go ahead, Greg.
Not a time, just so much basically a small task.
Something small.
Yeah.
Great. Greg?
Like I'll spend 15, 20 minutes per client, like at month-end close. But if I have questions or need information and that, I move on to the next client. So I don't get dragged into a specific client and trying to get everything all at once. It's like I'll set aside time when it's not busy. I'm in that early morning, and I'll send out those emails at the end of the day or the first thing in the next day, and put those together then. But then I move on to get the actual work done and checking my team's work and everything else, and kind of do that 15, 30 minutes, depending on the type of client and what kind of work we're doing.
That's awesome. I'm looking around the room, and all of us here, smack me if I'm wrong, but we're all technicians in our business, right? We're all actually doing the work in our business and not just overseeing the work in general, right? And I think that setting priorities is even a little more challenging when you're the technician and the manager and the entrepreneur, right? Good. Anybody else?
So you were talking about the urgent, important matrix. One thing that I've had conversations with before in the past, and I'm curious to hear kind of how y'all handle it, is falling into the trap that everything is urgent and everything is important, right? You talked about the glass jar and then having the big rocks and everything else, but when you kind of make that list and have that inventory of all the things you need to do, how do you avoid, or how do you recommend avoiding falling into that? Well, this is also important, and this is also important, and I need to do this yesterday.
What about the thinking? I mean, way back when I worked for a major oil company, one of the things they taught us was basically putting everything in a matrix where some things are more or less strategic, and some things are necessary but non-strategic. And that, that's where you draw the line between doing them yourself or getting the expert to do it or outsourcing it. It's how strategic it is, how vital it is to your particular business. I mean, everyone has to do bookkeeping, but that isn't what makes you a better business unless you're a bookkeeper.
Yeah, or you go hire somebody to do that. Delegate, delegate.
Exactly.
So Eric, I will answer your question with a question, because this is what I always come back to. And it's very simple for me to ask myself, is what I'm doing right now contributing to my goal? So number one, you got to have a goal, right? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Well, it could be your 5-year vision. It could be something closer, right, that you need to get done this week. But is what I'm doing, the activity right now, contributing to my goal? If the answer is no, it is absolutely not urgent. It may not even be important. I would move it to the bottom half of those 4 quadrants and look at what are the things that I should be doing now to contribute to my goal. So that's what I always do. I'm pretty simple. Karen?
I'm glad you just said that about the if what I'm doing right now is it important or is it helping me to do what I'm doing right now? Because one of our leaders who trains, it's a matter of fact, it's one of the women that does the training for does some of the training for us. She says she has that little comment on her mirror, on her computer, wherever she is, so she can see it. So I got funny. I sat there and wrote it down. Right now, one copy is sitting on the computer at the office I work at sometime, and the others run around in my bag with me every day. So yeah, definitely what we're doing right this second is it contributing to the importance or the results we're trying to get to. So thank you for that reminder.
I love it. Thank you, Karen. Anybody else have input to Eric's question? Welcome, Cortland.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sean?
Well, I think oftentimes, and we talked about it a little bit last time, that quadrant 3, is often disguised as quadrant 1. And sometimes we just have to think about, is it really important to us or is it important to somebody else? Because oftentimes the things we spend time on that are so important are those things that are important to other people. And so as you started by saying no, every time we say yes, we're saying no to a lot of other things. There's something else that you could have been spending your time on that are probably a priority to you, and hopefully those priorities are leading you to your goals. So understanding what am I doing right now that's helping me achieve whatever goal it is that's going to fall into, whether it's personal or professional, and most of our professional play into our personal. So you want to understand all of that. It really starts to give you a clarification. I mean, there's some things in one that we can't help, right? Like, something happens to our health, that's urgent and important. We can't get away from that. Something happens to a kid or a loved one, that's important and urgent. We've got to act now. Our biggest client calls, we've got to act now. But, when Troy calls me and says, hey man, let's go to the ball game, and I've got something else planned, it's important to him that I assist him at the ball game, but
it should be urgent.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
And I put in the chat a link to the video of Stephen Covey presenting the rocks, and it's really good. He walks a lady through it, and it will readjust what you think of that. It's really, really well done.
Unlike the Trisha version. Thanks, Sean.
It's not that, but he has her list the rock. Like, he has the rocks listed with each of her, what she considers her goals and priorities. And the way that he sets it up was a lot different than the first time I saw him do it. And I had the honor of spending 3 sessions that he led back when his first book came out. Nice. And he was like a nobody. Well, it wasn't a nobody, but he wasn't who people think of now. And it was amazing to hear him speak. And he did the rocks presentation then, but it wasn't like this. And this one I think is more powerful because he has someone choosing. She gets done. He's like, oh, so your health isn't important to you, or something like that. Or, don't have time for that big client. It's really well done. I think you'll enjoy it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So Cortland, not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot. We're talking about prioritization, right? So we've got a goal, we have a vision, we have whatever the thing is that we want to get done, and prioritizing the things that we need to do or not do, and how we might get through that. And Cortland, you have a very big team. You have a large team. So not only are things urgent, important, and prioritizing your own activities, but that happens in your team as well. How do you manage that prioritization between you and your team?
Well, the primary thing for us is meeting customer requirements. The team tries to work together in order to meet and satisfy those requirements. The biggest issue is when personal life interferes with business life, especially for the team members. And, like say a child gets sick or something like that, and we're working 7 days a week like we are right now. It makes life very, very difficult on the remaining team. And yes, the team tends to discipline itself, and that helps when the team is able to discipline themselves so that we can maintain the priorities.
Okay, good. And that's all about culture too, right? And the culture that you have in your business. Bill?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm outdoors. Okay. Yeah, I guess similar to that, to what Sean had said in Cortland, I've found over the last 5 years more challenge in balancing priorities across almost like different compartments of life, between kind of president of the company and then my immediate family, extended family, volunteer boards. And to me, that's where it's been the most challenging, is to try to weigh the high priority. I try to have high priority things in each area, but then trying to gel those high priorities for my own activities is where I can find it challenging to weigh the family vacation versus the acquisition we're working on, and how to prioritize those things when they come into conflict with each other. And I've tried to spend more time being more conscientious and conscious of those choices than I probably was 5 years ago. And I find it more satisfying by trying to more consciously write these things down and be more proactive about those trade-offs. So
Yeah, I like that, Bill. I started a few years ago, I decided people were not going to interrupt my vacation. So every December, I sit down with a paper calendar and I write when I'm going to be off, when I want to take off, and the things that I want to do throughout the year. And then I put them on the electronic calendar and I share them with my family so that I can also see them when people at work or in the nonprofit space that I volunteer in on the boards, if they ask me, can I do something? I just simply say no. Where before it was like, well, we were gonna go on vacation, but I guess we could push it back, or I don't need to be on. I know some of you this resonates with, right? Well, I could maybe not be on vacation that one day right in the middle. No, put it on your dang calendar, right? That stuff is important to you. Put it on your calendar and tell people no. And I do know.
And I think that's, and I take it a step further. I think that time blocking is huge. So even if you have a major project, and I think we heard that from the Ninja productivity dude, right? If you have something you're working on, put it on your calendar. And then when someone comes up to you and says, hey, can you do this? I'm sorry, I'm already scheduled. It makes it easier for some reason, rather than just say no, and you feel like you're rejecting them. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, Trish, I'm scheduled. And it's, oh, okay, well, and then you can find time that works for you. But if it's that important and that's going to drive you to your goal, that's that quadrant 1 seeping in, or quadrant 3 seeping up into the top level, right? Someone comes up and it's like, it's important and you feel bad and you really, really like them. When Troy calls and when Cortland calls and I really, really like Cortland and I want to help Cortland, but it's important to him and not me. And I think that's the stuff that we slip into, right? And then we fill our calendar with all that. And we get done at the end of the week. And we're like, gosh, I didn't hardly touch anything that I would want to accomplish. So I think you're right. The power of that calendar is huge.
John, I had $1 million deal for you, but your calendar was full. I'm sorry.
I'm available, Cortland. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Troy's always available. Trust me. Troy's got a wide open calendar.
Only for Cortland, not for Sean.
Oh my goodness. Greg?
And time blocking is important, because especially like when we went into COVID, and we were all working from home, is that time blocking became really important for me, so that I allow a certain amount of time each week to do networking, and I've got to focus on clients on certain times of each month. And so it's the time blocking, it carries on, and I have blocked out vacations and the whole year. So it's definitely what Sean was saying, the time blocking is, for me, it's been key.
Yeah, and how about taking that 1 hour meeting and shifting it back to 45 minutes so that you actually have a break in between Zoom meetings for those of you who are doing back to back to back, right? You got to prioritize yourself sometimes. You got to have time to go get your coffee or even go to the bathroom, for gosh sakes. How many of you have missed lunch because you were booked back to back to back? Yeah, yes, Cortland, yes. Right? We have to do some of those things. And Sean, I'm a big believer in calendar blocking, time blocking.
Well, and since, that the ninjas guy that we had talk to us, and he talked about the research that says you really need every 50 to 90 minutes, a break of at least 10 minutes. I've been scheduling all my meetings for 50 minutes. So they're not an hour anymore. It's 50 minutes. And if I send them an invite, it shows it's 50 minutes. And that way, even if I am back to back, I have that 10-minute break, and it makes a huge difference at the end of the day. You're not nearly as exhausted. And whenever I have a meeting run over and then I am back to back, I can feel it immediately. It's like it's hard to focus in the second meeting. It's hard to get things together. But if I just take that few minutes, get up from my desk, walk around, it's amazing how much difference that makes.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kathy, we haven't heard from you yet. And I know you have a team and things become urgent, out of your control sometimes. How do you deal with prioritizing?
Okay, so something that I had to learn whenever I started this company was that there is nothing that we do that is an emergency in the middle of the night that I have to get out of bed and do something. So we create contingency plans for emergencies. So let's say someone doesn't show up. I have an order of operations that I go through, contacting the family, reaching out to the caregiver saying, okay, is it just, you got a flat tire? Did you forget to clock in? Finding somebody else to fill that, letting the family know if they go, oh, don't worry about today because I'm going to go pick her up and take her out anyway. Okay, great. So you have a plan in place, and we've had to do things like that because we've had statewide freezes, we've had hurricanes, we've had floods, and so when you are establishing a client, you set that up front. What do you need to do? What do you need us to do? What can you do? Who has all the roles? And every client's a little bit different because some people live with a big family, some people live alone. So I think for me and my business, I've learned there is nothing that is going to pop up that it's going to be like, oh my God, and I have to get up and run. There's nothing. I've set it up so that there's nothing that I have to do in that way. There are things that I will have to make phone calls and check on things, but there is no emergency that needs my presence, needs me to jump up out of bed in the middle of the night. That was my previous industry, and I didn't want that in this industry. So I've set it up that way. And I wanted to comment on something you said earlier that's been kind of like, it's been itchy in my mind, but you put it into words. I've always had a hard time with goals needing to be something that is going to be accomplished. Like a goal is, I'm going to get my master's degree. I'm going to lose 50 pounds. I'm going to run a marathon. Instead of a goal being, I'm going to spend more time with my kids this year. We're going to do, 1,000 hours outside. You've heard this, there's goals online where you can do things like that, and they're encouraging that kind of thing. And it's taken me a while to wrap my brain around two things. One, that my goals can be not something that I have to get a certificate for, because I've got so many of those.
Says the engineer in the room.
I don't have to have a piece of paper that says I did this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also that a lot of the goals I had set up for myself, even now, owning my own business, 3 years into it, are someone else's goals. And so I have been going through this year, coming to terms with, who do I really want to be? What life do I really want to lead? I've gone through a lot of, Trisha, a lot of changes within the past year. My priorities have changed completely. So we were just commenting on this last night because we were celebrating my son's 18th birthday. I had him when I was 10, but we were sitting there, playing board games, and it was me and Brian and his son and my son and his ex-brother-in-law. He said, if you would have told me 10 years ago, this is what my life would look like today, he said, I would never have believed you. Never. He said, but it's so wonderful. And I'm so happy. I'm like, yeah, this is great. And no, I would never have. 10 years ago, I was almost done with my engineering degree. I was, pulling all-nighters, and my marriage was falling apart, and, all these things were happening. And no, I could never have guessed where I would be now. So now I have to say, okay, the goals I set for myself a few years ago, do they still make sense? No. Is it even something that I want to do, or is just what I thought I needed to do? So I'm looking at everything a little bit differently now. And thank you for putting that into words, because I that's what's been bugging me, because I've been having this existential crisis where I'm like, what are my priorities? My priorities should be my goals. Well, what are my goals? And my goals, when I started writing them out, weren't mine. So.
Yeah, and you have to find balance, right? You have to find balance there, and your priorities will change for sure. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Hey, Big Phil. Is he pretending to listen? I'm getting it. Philip Barrera. No.
I think he's multitasking.
Yeah, I'm going to get him later. I'm just going to call him up and be like, I saw you sitting on the call, not listening. It's all good. It's all good. Brad, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're just talking about prioritization and tips and tricks that people can use, or even if they need help with doing those things. Yeah, priorities do shift. As a matter of fact, the other Stetzel was supposed to be presenting with me today, and he's the slide guy. I don't do slides unless somebody makes me. And I just like to facilitate the conversation. And he reached out to me this morning and he said, I'm going to be on the way to the airport, and I'm not going to make the call today. And I was like, okay, that's good. And there's a part of me that's like, well, you told me that you were going to be there and we were going to do this thing together. And then I remembered he's actually flying to Dallas to pick up my grandmother. And I went, oh, priorities, right? Priorities. And Sean, you mentioned earlier, so if somebody gets sick, or your kids, and you think about the time that we can carve out for those things, we have time to take care of the priorities in our business and our life too, right? Because if somebody gets sick, if you needed to go pick your grandmother up from Dallas, if you needed to go take care of your kid or get somebody to the emergency room, you would absolutely make the time to do that. So we should all be making the time to take care of those priorities that are in our business and even in our personal lives, right?
I think we often forget that most of us work to fill a personal goal, right? There's a reason that we're working. I love what I do. Don't misread me. Love it. But would I work as hard as I do if I were a billionaire? Probably not. I would still do some, and I think we often push those, personal things that we work so hard to support to the side. And then we get done and we're like, wow, I kind of missed that. I know when I was in my first business, I made it a point I was never going to miss a kids event. And I didn't. I mean, hell or high water, I was going to be there. Right. And I think those kind of things are just important, we forget about that. We forget about our friends. We forget about our family. We think because they know us so well, they'll understand. And they do for the most part, but that doesn't take away from what we missed by not being there. I just think that stuff's really, really important. And we can use our calendar to really help us in that regard if we so choose to. And that's all that quadrant 2 stuff, right? That's not waste. That's quadrant vacations, time away, exercise, taking that 10-minute breath. It's all quadrant 2 stuff that's going to support you much longer than putting out the fire that's yelling your name. So great point.
Awesome. Troy, we haven't heard from you. Thoughts around prioritization?
Well, just bantering with Sean back and forth, but no, great comments. And the other thing about priorities is I love the A through E method, and literally daily I've lived by that in the corporate world and in my own practice as well, because you got the big picture like Sean was talking about, the goals and things, but then you break it down into the activities that are daily, weekly, what have you. And I'm constantly working with clients to focus that activity into those kinds of lists and then prioritizing those. And it was funny, the other day I was talking to one of my clients. I said, so what are you doing today to move the needle forward in your business? Are you working on the business or in it? We talked about that for a little bit, and finally he was like, okay, no, I'm working in it all the time, Troy. That's what I do. And I'm like, dude, we got to move the needle forward. That's how we're going to scale your company and what have you. And it's a shift in, like Sean said, you're working toward a goal, but you're breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and prioritizing those. And those shift daily sometimes, but you still keep those focused, and you carve out time blocking that the team was talking about, critical. Without time blocking on my calendar, nothing would get done, because if it's on there, I'm accountable to it. I got to look at it and go, darn it, I'm meant to do that. So time blocking and focus. And the other thing I would say is eliminate distractions. I mean, phone dings, the computer dings and everything, everybody's wanting your time. And I think Sean mentioned it. I can't believe I'm giving him so much credit, but he had mentioned how many times, I heard this a while back. I wish I'd have learned this in the corporate world. Because when you're working globally and you sleep for only 5 or 6 hours a night and you get 100 emails the next morning, I mean, come on, really? I mean, what do you do with that? But every email is someone else's priority. The question is, does it match your goals and your priorities for the day? Or is it someone else's priority? And maybe it's a C-level priority for you when you can get to it. So just food for thought, breaking that down on a daily basis.
Yeah. I like that. And, Troy, it brings another thing to mind too, which is our phone, right? Our phone, our email, text messages, group messages, all of those things that are happening. I read a study, it was a few years back. It's probably changed since then, but it takes 17 minutes to refocus every time something goes off. The sound, the pop-up, the whatever it is, the doorbell. It takes you 17 minutes every time that happens to refocus with the same amount of focus that you had before. How many 17 minutes times a day are you losing because you don't turn the sound off on your phone and turn it over? That's what I do. My phone's muted and I just put it, if I have something to do, I'll leave it in the other room. I'll put it somewhere. If it buzzes, it doesn't go on the table, right? And that way I'm able to focus on the things that are priorities for me. Because if I have to be distracted 50 times 17, I'll never get anything done. Ever.
Doesn't that get longer as you get older?
Yes, Cortland, it does. Now it takes me 36 minutes. Oh. And the other thing too, while we're on this subject, I've been on this rant lately about people who think scrolling is downtime. People think scrolling, and I mean on social media, right, or YouTube, watching videos, haha, it's funny because it's mindless. It's baloney. It still takes brain power to do the thing, and you're not allowing the creativity that you would normally have in the quiet time to seep in because you're filling that space with scrolling. So stop it. Tell your kids to stop it. Tell your mom to stop it. Okay, that was for me. Brad, do you have any tips for prioritization, whether it's business or home, things that you do to stay on task?
No, but I appreciate hearing these. The 36 minutes. I'm older than you, I think. So
Yeah, maybe I'm up to an hour. But yeah, that's definitely, I see the impact of that interruption. I mute my email so my email doesn't ding or anything, and so I don't get noticed when I get email now. So that one distraction I've taken out of my view.
Yeah, I like that. You know, there are a lot of electronic ways to remove that stuff. Even the scrolling on your work computer, realizing some of you, your personal and your work computer are the same, but you can actually turn off the feed in your social media. There are tools for that. Brad could probably help us with it, right? Turn off the feed, because if you're using social media for business, you should be posting and only looking for certain things. You shouldn't be scrolling, right? And you can turn that off. You can turn that feed off in your social media, which will help with distractions and give you better focus time on your priorities. Yeah, Kathy
It's
agreed.
amazing how many times we'll talk to executives and owners and presidents and leaders, and one of the hardest things they have is ignoring their email. You know, getting them to not worry about email, even though, you know, what's standard turnaround on an email for most people, it's, you know, that day or 24 hours if they send it at the end of the day. So if you check it in the morning, you check it around lunch, you check it in the evening, you're more than ahead of the standard. Yet for whatever reason, people can't. I got to check my email. Oh, it dinged. I got to answer the email. It's amazing how much time we waste. And you're right. When you start thinking about it, you're then having to refocus, regroup. One email leads to another. And then there's some of us that love to check that box. Hey, I accomplished something. I cleared out 27 bad emails. Woo! Well, did that move you any closer to your goal? Probably not. But boy, you got that rush of, man, I cleared out 50 spam emails that are going to be there again tomorrow. And I'm going to clear them out again instead of taking time to non-subscribe. But man, I accomplished something. You know, we talk ourselves into these things.
I see people going, yeah, that's me.
But it happens, right? And most of us, right? We're all high performers. We want to achieve. That's why we take time to do things like this. Right now, we're in quadrant 2, right? We're taking time to get better. We're sharpening the saw. Yet we'll get off this call and go, okay, let me see what happened in my email while I was on the call. Oh yeah, I got to do that. Okay. And let me text my buddy, and I better text Trish, cause that was really good. And you know, it's amazing how we learn and then we digress, but small steps in the right direction will get us there. Right.
Yeah. 1%, right? That's all it takes. 1%, a 1% shift, a 1% change. It's that, you know, that elephant that you eat one bite at a time. It really is. We don't have to do it all at once. Good. Philip Jordan, welcome.
Hello.
I know everyone is so excited that I'm facilitating today because no one gets a break. No one, not even Philip Barrera. He will hear from me after this call. I'm just saying. So Philip Jordan, tell us, what are some tips or tricks you use in the area of prioritization?
I need so much work. I can't offer any tips right now.
Hey, and that's okay, right? That's why we're here, is to share.
Yeah, it's I'm taking this in like drinking from a fire hose. Okay, I need to stop scrolling through social media today. I need to start working on unsubscribing spam so I don't have to delete it every day, sometimes 3 times a day. Thanks,
Sean. We're all going to be sitting around unsubscribing tonight, right? When we go through our email, like unsubscribe. I'm going to take the extra 3 seconds to unsubscribe so that I don't have to use 25 seconds every time I go and delete this silly email. Yeah. Okay, so calendar blocking is one. Brad talked about setting email to silent, right? So that you're intentional about checking those emails. By the way, if you have urgent things coming in your inbox, you need to talk to the person who's sending you urgent things in your inbox. They need to pick up the phone and call you if it's urgent, right? So your email shouldn't be urgent. We can turn the feed off, stop scrolling. Any other tools that anybody's using?
Well,
Kathy?
regarding that email, remember the ninja guy said you could even put in your footer, hey, I check email once a day, twice a
Yes.
day, whatever it is. If this is urgent, call me or do, tell them what else to do. Text me, whatever. Of course, then you're staring at every text. I don't know that that helps you, but do something else to notify me that it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Kathy?
And on the other side of that, Sean, I've seen people put in their signature, if you receive this email outside of normal working hours, please feel free to not respond until normal working hours. I think that's very nice. I think the pandemic's got us all messed up on like.
Kathy, I think if I take time to send one out of normal working hours, you better darn respond to me right away. I don't know what your problem is. I don't care if it is 2:00 in the morning. You pull that phone and you answer.
That always breaks my heart when I see an email reply and it's 2 or 3 a.m. I'm like, oh dear.
And here, that's a great point. By the way, if you reply to people after your working hours that you have determined, if you reply to people outside of normal working hours, you make it okay for them to continue to communicate with you outside of normal working hours. So stop it.
Y'all don't work 24/7?
Cortland.
What's
So
up?
on that, I wanted to mention, these are not things that I have implemented. These are things my partner has implemented because he's just discovered as an adult, he has severe ADHD. So he's started implementing systems. He has an online to-do list that will tell him when he's hit 6 hours of work, and they'll say, don't put anything else in this list. Take your lower priority things and put them to tomorrow. So it manages his productivity. And then he also has systems set in place that during working hours, every screen will reflect what he needs to focus on. His watch, his phone, everything automatically switches at a certain time of day so that he will not receive random, extraneous things because he is easily distracted. And so he also has it set up that when working hours end, everything flips. He can no longer be distracted by work. So that's helped him focus a lot and make that transition, because it's hard when you work from home. You do end up working 24/7 because your office is right there. It's right
And
there.
I believe that if you have an iPhone, it has that setting, focus. You can change the focus for what you want it to happen, and what you should be focusing on.
Shout out to the eye people.
I don't know how to use it, but it's in there.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for focus time. Yeah, absolutely. And Kathy, it is not untrue that as an entrepreneur working from home, you can work or feel like you need to work 24/7. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to. Set boundaries, create that balance, and you can have a life too, right? As an entrepreneur, you can. Now, if you're in the baby phase of your business, I get you're going to be spending a lot more hours in your business, but work towards finding that balance, because if you continue to do that 24/7, those people who say sleeping is for dead people, no, people are dead because they didn't sleep, right? Sleeping is not for dead people, it's for healthy people. Sleeping is good. Eating on a regular schedule is good. Eating the right things. Don't, be driving all over the place, eating stuff from the drive-through window. Plan it. It all has to do with priorities. If you want to be healthy, you need to do all of those things, and you don't have to work 24/7. When I got into this business, even at the back end of my pet sitting business, so Kathy, my pet sitting business, just like yours, 24/7, 365, especially on the holidays, right? And I didn't have a weekend or a holiday. So I decided one day that I would, and I was going to take a vacation, and that's where it all started, right? I will take a vacation and I will have a weekend and I will be done at 5 o'clock. And I won't work on Monday mornings and I won't work on Friday afternoons.
Don't you want those international clients?
Cortland.
Yeah.
No, I'm good, my friend. I'm good.
That was back in my oil and gas consulting days, we had a saying that the great thing about being a consultant is that you can take a half a day off whenever you wanted to. Question is, what 12 hours didn't you want to get paid?
Oh, God.
And that's the thing that, I mean, it took me about 4 years as a consultant to shut that off and say, okay, this is work time, this is family time, or this is whatever. And it, you know, that's the mindset that everyone gets into.
It is, Barry, and we have to shift our mindset, right? It's okay to take a break. It's okay to have dinner with your family. It's okay to leave to go to a baseball game during the middle of the day if you want to. You create that. If that is your priority, is what you're doing right now contributing to your goal. And if your goal is to spend more time with your kids and go to a baseball game in the middle of the day, then by gosh, I'll bet you figure out a way to do it.
All right. I'm sorry, Troy. I'll go next time.
See, I knew. All right. I love you guys. I don't know how we ended up here 4 minutes to the hour. What a great conversation. Good. Any like, oh my gosh, I have to go do this thing right now, just based on our conversation today. Karen, what are you going to go do?
She's going to scroll the internet.
You will scroll. Well, when we get through here, I'm gonna go get something to eat. Then I got some phone calls I gotta make today, so I gotta go do that.
Okay. It all contributes to the goal, right? Yeah, absolutely. Greg, how about you?
It was a good reminder on the A, B, C, D, E, eliminate. I had forgotten about that because sometimes, you know, it's whether it's a bad client that you're avoiding doing anything about because you don't want to deal with them because it's drama. And, you know, and I fully admit I have one like that right now that I'm debating if I'm going to dismiss or not. And I don't want to respond and have to deal with them because it'll be too much time.
Wow, that's a great topic. We need to cover that, right? How do you decide, and let's call it fire clients. That's not nice, is it?
That's right.
But it's true, right? Aren't there certain people that cause us so much stress,
Mm-hmm.
and they take so much of our time that we lose our priorities?
Yeah.
Man, yeah.
And they're always the ones that take the longest to pay their invoices.
Isn't that the truth, Barry? I know.
That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brad, what are you taking away from today?
Yeah, came in late, so I missed part of it, but yeah, I need to work on my priorities of focus and try to let some things go. But
yeah, hard to say no. That's okay. All right, Cortland, what are you gonna do?
First off, I've got to say, Mark Coates said hello to you guys at Focus.
Nice.
The main thing that I got to do is I got to increase the number of presentations I'm giving in Australia and Europe so that I can do that 24/7 much more often, because apparently I'm slowing down.
Because it takes you 36 minutes to refocus, Cortland. All right, Karen. All right. Thank you all for being here. We will be back in March on the second Thursday, which is the 9th. Again, isn't that interesting? So March 9th, we'll be back here, same bat channel, same bat time. I hope you guys have an amazing afternoon. Go find your priorities, work towards them. You got to create the goal first, and then find ways that work for you to put the priorities first. And you should be one of those priorities. Just saying. You guys have a great afternoon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Trisha. Take care. Bye-bye.